I'm Barbara Wade. I've always been drawn to water, maybe because I was born and lived on the ocean all my childhood. And so the first set of my poems are about water. Shell seekers. Shell seekers pass at dawn, heads down, eyes scanning sand, search for the perfect form. Fragile bleached sand dollar, salmon streaked and charcoal scallops, bronze Florida fighting conch, white filigree angel wing. I select irregular shapes, sea sculpt whelks, eroded walls curled around slender cyclone center or paired to creamy calla lily, golden oyster ovals with labia lips, maroon eye at moonshell spiral heart urging solitude, ivory white baby's ears listening to the lap of waves on lightning shore. My husband and I took the Inside Passage, the Alaska Ferry down the Inside Passage, and so the next two poems are about that experience. First night on the Alaska Ferry. Through the labyrinth of corridors, finely stilled of all but metallic creaks and low groans, past the long taloned eagle entombed in glass, and the steward's round clock now glowering 3. I pressed through stout doors to the starboard alcove, escaped from my sweltering cubicle berth. Wild wind lifts steam from my braided hair, caresses my face with a salty mist. Faint star-illumined whitecaps dance toward a distant, dim shadow of land as I lean from my waist far over the rail for a glimpse of Aurora Borealis. The next poem I originally wrote as a sonnet, but then I ended up truncating it by taking off the couplet at the end. Inside Passage, Queen Charlotte Strait. The Malaspina ferries sideways sway, hypnotic as the engine's alto hum entwine with gentle splash against the gray still hull, fragmenting waves to foamy crumb. A narrow strip of islands, long and green, across a vast expanse of mottled grays, creates a dark relief against the sheen of layered mainland mountains gauzed in haze. Above the powder puffs, a thin streak of blue. Lulled by the peaceful watercolor world, I doze and dream on the leeward deck, my thoughts like the Inside Passage, tranquil and pearled. Growing up, we moved around. My dad was in the Navy, and so my sister was always my best friend, and we remain close to today. When we were in our 40s, we had an opportunity after her children were grown to be alone together again for the first time in decades, and we went to the Gulf Coast. Our grandfather, who was a farmer, was also a great fisherman. This is surf casting for Sharon. 2 sisters, we wade into salt sea water, push knees then thighs against the surf. Chest deep, we leap into each wave's crest, rise up and over, until even in the lulls, our feet no longer find bottom. With bait bucket and poles, we swim to the second sandbar, far out into the Gulf. Balanced at the edge of its shifting sand and waist-high water, we cast into the deep until the first fish strikes, 18 inches of silver struggle. Then we swim with it shoreward, granddaughters of Neptune. I was also very close to my brother, but he unfortunately died in an automobile accident when he was 38. Road to Gothic. Lavender columbines lined the winding road to Gothic. Dewy bluebells nod to white-barked aspens whose upper leaves whisper, shimmer in early morning light. Across the deep ravine, The verdant line declines. Golden, a patch of old man-of-the-mountain daisies guards the opposite hillside. Around the bend, two figures silhouetted against blue sky. My curious eyes follow theirs downward to a red metallic shine amongst the green. I grip my husband's arm. For an instant, it's my brother, endlessly overturning on a windy mountain road. Pilgrimage. My brother's arm extends, pointing to the snowy peak, his body half turned in the seat toward his young son. I can almost hear his keen whistle, his laughter alive in the dawn. See tires skid on loose gravel, a quick jerk on the steering wheel. Then borrowed top-heavy Jeep lists to the left, balances momentarily, tumbles, overturns again and again. Mike's body flung through the windshield to the rocks below. I yearn to travel to that site visited only in recurrent dreams, plant a cross in the exact spot, recite Hopkins' Carrion Comfort, sing Whistling Gypsy, wail, lay my own spirit to rest. The next poem came from a class I took with Letha Kendrick at the Carnegie Center. She asked us to describe either a room in the house or an outdoor space around the house, and then after we did that, to use that as a metaphor for someone. So I wrote this poem about my father entitled Timbre. In sunny times, my father seemed level and open as the backyard deck where we lay listening to boyhood tales of Chinaberry battles and watermelon wars, or Sinbad's adventure on pitching seas. His words fell over us like cool water cascading in the corner copper fountain. When the incantation of his voice stilled, my sister and I would implore, "Tell us another sea story." In stormy weather, my father would shout, "All hands on deck, on the double!" With one uncertain step, we would slip on the slick surface of anger, splinters of argument piercing tender skin. His voice pelted us like hailstones. Early, we learned to tiptoe to the deck's edge, scan the blue for hints of gray, ears wide, listening for distant rumblings. The next poem is coming from a collection that isn't yet published. It's at the printer actually right now. It's really in honor of my mother's indomitable spirit. And it's in the form of a villanelle, which the most famous villanelle perhaps is Dylan Thomas's "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." And the villanelle, as many of you in this room know, is a very strict form in which the first and third lines of the first stanza are repeated in alternate stanzas, creating an echo. Blind optimism. For years, my mom was going blind. She lay her quilting cross-stitched down, but kept her optimistic mind. To give up driving was a bind, but she would walk the mile to town. For years, my mom was going blind. She spoke of friends, forever kind, who called for her when coffee bound. She kept her optimistic mind. She loved to read and might have pined, but talking books brought tales with sound. For years, my mom was going blind. Fair weather weeks, with friends she dined, but battled loneliness snowbound. Still kept her optimistic mind. She loved life to the very rind, never let struggles her spirit drown. Even when my mom was fully blind, she kept her optimistic mind. The last two poems I'm going to read to you are inspired by literary works. The first is patterned after Wallace Stevens' The Emperor of Ice Cream. I sort of imagine what might reign supreme for women in a world that is dictated by conflicting diets. The Queen of Celery, for Wallace Stevens. Call the dancer in black fishnet tights, the thin one, and bid her chop on the dinette counter stringy stalks of green. Let housewives stretch their leotards as they squat and thrust on linoleum, and let leaders bring sheets of low-fat recipes. Let loss be beginning of piety. The only queen is the queen of celery. Bring out the book with the bacon and steak, the limitless cream and butter. Let arteries clog with fat-burning fuel. Banish the pineapple, potato, papaya, breadsticks, lasagna, brown rice. Suggest only greens will suffice. Let even the carrot be considered heresy. The only queen is the queen of celery. When I found out that the Atkins diet banned even the carrot, I thought, well, you can't eat the carrot, what can you eat? So, and then the last, we've all heard of revisionist history. I was really struck when I read Jean Rhys's Why Sargasso Sea about the way in which she made me re-envision Jane Eyre by creating the prehistory of the mad woman in the attic. So this is Wide Seas Apart for Jean Rhys. 1. Eden Rejected. Fluorescent flowers leer as he leaves the honeymoon house. Their fragrance cloys thick air under a glaring sun. His retinas burn, temples pound. He would give a fortune never to have seen these West Indian isles, this Creole woman. A fortune. He has only hers. Second brother, tricked by his own flesh and blood and her half-brother Richard into marrying. And then the letter slipped under his door. Half-black relations, a mad mother, idiot brother. She too must be insane. No sane woman could make love with such abandon, could dissolve at his withdrawal with such despair. No venomous snakes on this island, he said, but his stomach still swirls from the red wine drugged with her love potion. He could return to England alone, but no, he'll not abandon his mad, beautiful bride to the arms of other lovers. He digs sharp heels into the sides of the mule and begins the descent to the sea. He could never belong here. The air, quality of light, proclaim him outcast, foreign. Edward sighs. Under closed eyelids, mist of Northumberland rise. 2. Loss of Frangipani. Forever cold, Antoinetta, locked in her dark attic, rough gray wool on skin born to West Indian sea breeze, exiled most from Cape Jasmine, Frangipani, white ginger lilies glowing in tropical moonlight. Here even full moons seldom filter through one high window, tight shuttered against damp Northumbrian air. Here no cooing Inca doves, chatty parrots, only guttural ravens, shrill caw of crows. Just her red dresses left, color of sunset, brilliant as the one she wore for Sandy in Spanish Town. She should have gone then, escaped with her cousin to Martinique, far from this dark place, this hard man. She never asked answers to Bertha, name he gave her, cold as the bare attic floor. Senses long dulled by mildew and dust stir with Richard's visit. Faint floral scent clings to his shirt, lime flower and cinnamon mingled with Frangipani. His Creole tongue music to her famished ears. But no rescue. Brother betrayed again, she dreams of fire. Candlelit curtains flame hot as sunrise in Colibri. The wind on Thornfield's roof catches her long hair, billows out sleeves like wings. Behind her, Rochester cries, Bertha, as Antoinetta leaps to join the reddening sky. Thank you so much.